Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. It is the Jim K. Ford Sens Nation podcast, and let's get right into it. Lots coming up as we enter the final days before the NHL Draft. The free agent frenzy not that far away as well, so lots of dialogue out there about the Ottawa Senators and probably Greg right now. We had two goalies on the move this week in Jacob Markstrom, off the Sens wish list, traded to the Devils. Darcy Kuemper, dealt to LA for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and now all eyes are on Linus Ullmark. Vezina Trophy winner, and the Sens are reportedly in discussions with the Bruins to acquire Linus Ullmark, and there's reports and rumblings out there about what he'd want in an extension. To me, Greg, that's step one. Clearly, it sounds like, based on the rumors that are out there, Ullmark is willing to waive his no-movement clause to come to Ottawa, but we don't know exactly what his appetite is like for an extension, nor do we know what that extension would exactly be, and that will be the deal breaker here, potentially.
Well, I think, it goes without saying that if you're going to go out and acquire a goaltender, he better be locked in. If you're convinced that this is the guy, then he better be locked in. There better be a long-term deal attached to it. I just don't know if he's the guy, Steve. Maybe I'm just gun shy now. The Senators and their goaltending graveyard and goalie after goalie after goalie being a failure here. I just the guy really didn't do much in Buffalo. You know, he looked good in Boston playing behind that defense, playing on a top 4 or 5 team in the NHL every year he was there. He looked damn good. I don't know if he's the answer either. So it leaves me wondering with the question of, do you need to fix the defense first and then find the goalie, or do you find the goalie now and hope that helps enough and then you get some defensemen later? I just don't know. I'm gun shy. I'm sorry I don't have a distinct set opinion on this one, Steve, whether it should be signed or not signed. I'm just really gun shy. I'm nervous.
It all comes down to what you have to give up. We never know what the price tag exactly is. How much are you going to have to give up? What's that extension going to be? The reports that are out there, that the extension demand from Ullmark will be $35 million over 5 years, a $7 million a year goalie. And you've already got a guy who's got $4 million a year for the next 4 seasons in Joonas Korpisalo. So, yeah, I mean, it all has to make sense for the Ottawa Senators. But one thing that it will do, I think, Greg, and I like this about it, in that Ullmark won a Vezina Trophy. So you know he can do it. He's done it before, and he can do it again potentially. He's only 30 years of age. He's got a Vezina Trophy. So if he comes here and he looks like all the goalies in the past have looked here, not that good, then we know with 100% confirmation that it's not a goalie situation. It is time 100% to just absolutely go crazy on this roster, move half of it out because they don't know how to play defense. And if Ullmark comes here and they continue to look the same way, it doesn't improve the goaltending. That's a confirmation. So that would be, I guess, the silver lining, though it would put them in an awful bad place if they sign him to a 5-year contract worth $7 million. No, I'd be gun shy on any deal like that, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like, let's make the deal just so we can find out once and for all if it's our defense or if it's the bad goaltending decisions. I don't know. I got to figure that if you are going to do this, no matter who the goalie is, Korpisalo's got to go, doesn't he? Like, you have to figure out a way to either get somebody to take him off your hands or buy him out. I can't see you having a $4 million guy and a $7 million guy or whatever it ends up being. I just can't see that much money being tied up in goal when you have other issues that need to be addressed as well. It's not like this is the only thing. It's not like, hey, this is a Stanley Cup contender, except for one problem. Let's find a goalie, because there are other areas that need to be addressed. And I just think that addressing those other areas might get your answer to, is it goaltending or is it defense? Like this, does hiring a new coach, that help fix your defense? Let's hope so. Does finding another right shot D to play in your top 4, is that going to help your defense? I would certainly hope so. So there are other things that need to happen in order for me to feel more confident about spending $7 million on a 30-year-old goaltender.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable spending that kind of money on any player in any situation, because you never know. It could be a Josh Norris type of a situation. Thomas Chabot hasn't lived up to his contract. Colin White, Joonas Korpisalo. There's always a bit of a risk, a bit of a gamble. But we do know this, a buyout option is about to exist 48 hours after the Stanley Cup Final comes to a close. The buyout window opens and runs through until June 30th. So there is a possibility that that they maybe want to, if they do think that that the Ullmark deal may go down. That is an option that's available to them. I don't know that you can move that contract based on the stats we saw last year, but it is going to be interesting. And, it would be nice if Ullmark is just an easy, quick fix. But we know he's willing to move the no trade clause, but will he be willing to sign here long term and forego UFA? That's one of the things I always wonder about. UFA is a very compelling thing. The full open auction, everybody with a fist of dollars ready to back up a Brinks truck to bid for your services. To forego that, that's a big ask, and you're going to have to pay through the nose for it. So whatever the extension was going to be, maybe in Boston to stay where he was comfortable, it's going to be more with any other team, including the Ottawa Senators.
For sure. I don't know. We're now, I think we now both agree with each other that it's a bit of a risk and we're not sure if we want to take it. Is that safe to say? Yeah.
That's fair. That is fair. Moving on. Travis Yost on TSN put out a tweet this week that got the gums of flapping of Sens fans. He put it out there. I believe the Ottawa Senators and Philadelphia Flyers have the framework of a trade in place as well. And he says that because I believe he was the one that broke the Jacob Markstrom trade. So that's the as well part of this. I believe the Sens and Flyers have the framework of a trade in place as well, though this one may go closer to the draft. And so it got people wondering, okay, what does Philadelphia have that could help out the Senators and vice versa? So what was your reaction to hearing about the framework of a trade?
Well, my first reaction was, what exactly does that mean? What is the framework trade? Does that mean, okay, you can have one of these three players and one of these couple draft picks we're going to take one of these two players, or like, what does that mean exactly? The framework of a trade? Or is it more like they've actually consummated a deal, but they don't want to announce it because really you shouldn't during the Stanley Cup playoffs or during the finals at least, but that doesn't seem to be affecting half the other teams in the league. They're all conducting their business despite the finals going on. I don't know. I look at Philly and the usual names crop up. And I'm thinking that most of these guys, like the Walker kid on defense, Joel Farabee up front, maybe it's a Josh Tippett. Maybe it's Owen Tippett. Sorry. I look at this and I think those are the kind of guys that Philly's going to want to keep. So who would be willing to give up? And then I get into my Steve Warren concept of, well, if they're willing to give him up, do we really want the guy? And I'm looking at Travis Konechny in particular, and I'm thinking, new contract, he's going to want like $8-9 million. Apparently that's out there. Do they really want to spend that kind of money on what they perceive to be maybe a top six guy, probably more like a middle six guy? I don't know. I'm looking at this trade. I'm looking at the two teams, the two rosters, and thinking how they fit together. And I'm not really seeing much there that's going to blow my socks off, and unless you're moving out one of your top six and replacing him with somebody coming in. I'm thinking maybe it's a Sean Couturier. That might be an interesting pickup. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what the framework turns out to be.
Yeah, and it could be one of those, trading down scenarios. There's talk that Philadelphia has someone in mind, and they wouldn't mind Ottawa's 7th overall pick. And if the Sens are thinking of maybe a Kemchuk later in the draft, they think he might be there at 12 when the Flyers pick, and maybe you pull something off that way. When you just say a framework of a deal, it could be something super small. It could be something super big. The Travis Konechny angle is an interesting one, given his history with the Ottawa 67s. He's tight with Claude Giroux. I don't know if I want to be spending that kind of dough, though, on a guy who has just, he had 68 points this year. I like his feistiness. I like his compete level. Good player. But 68 points is a career high for him. And, is that going to be his new norm? Okay, then maybe we can talk about, that kind of money at $7 million plus. Or is this an outlier? I don't know. So as with the original discussion, this is not going to be an easy summer for Steve Staios because there's lots of intrigue, lots of things that pique your interest, but nothing where you go, oh, yeah, that's a slam dunk. Boom, that's going to make the Ottawa Senators a playoff team almost overnight. This is the art of being a GM, and Sens fans should have their fingers crossed. Steve Staios seems like a quality human being. He seems to be a smart guy. He's certainly a hockey lifer and knows the game well, but this is his first foray into this wildness of the NHL draft and the free agent frenzy and all the trading rumors that are going on around there. I hope it all goes well for the Sens. It's not an easy thing.
I see Travis Konechny as being a year or two away from Brendan Gallagher.
Oh, really?
That's that's the way I see Travis Konechny right now. I'm sorry to Travis Konechny fans out there and to any of his family or friends who might be listening, but that's what I see. I see him as being a guy who is a niche role and fits it well and does it well when he's healthy and competing and like in the lineup and doing his job. But I could see him being a year or two away from the, oh my God, how much are we paying this guy? And he's nowhere near what he used to be. I get that kind of vibe off of Travis Konechny.
Yeah. And the Sens have enough of that right now on the roster with guys who are making more than they should. And yeah, boy, that's a tough one. I don't know where I fall on that one, but that is the story from Travis Yost, that something's brewing between the Flyers and the Senators. And, you know, just thinking about that roster and reasonably, like, I mean, if you want to bring home Radek Bonk's son, then, you know, that might be an intriguing sort of a scenario. But in the big picture, I think I'm probably going, let's maybe something smaller. I don't feel like there's that home run deal to be made between those particular two teams, but time will tell.
Well, it could be Chychrun, though. The old man played in Philly. I mean, it could be as big a deal as Chychrun, and Philly's going to need goaltending. I think they're going to be without Carter Hart for a little while. You know, is there a fit there? Would they actually be interested in taking Korpisalo? You know, could you finagle some sort of something better than a middle six guy if you're dangling Chychrun? It's going to be interesting. Well, we'll find out. What is it? Friday night, right? We'll find out Friday night.
Moving on. 3 former Senators who might be worth bringing home. The first one that popped up, J.G. Pajot. Well, Dylan DeMello is the first one. We've been talking about him for a while now. He would be a nice fit, but J.G. Pajot's name came up this week in that the Islanders do want to go free agent shopping, and to do so, they're going to have to have some capital shake loose. They're going to be tight to the cap, even with the escalation of the salary caps across the league. They need to find some money to go shopping with. And J.G. Pajot, it's funny, all the New York media that I read was saying, he's making $5 million a year, and you're not really putting up the points that you expect from a $5 million a year player. To me, I look at, he's down a little bit. I think he's like 33, something like that this year, but mostly hovering around 40 through his time on Long Island. And it's like, to me, that looks like a guy who's still doing J.G. Pajot things. He's not worth $5 million. He's more than his stats say he's worth. And, I think that's still the same player as the one that left here. So if there's a deal to be done, if the Islanders maybe took on some salary, or maybe there's a buyout that was discussed as well, could you see a scenario where Pajot might be a fit back in Ottawa?
Yeah, and that scenario involves just what you intimated there. That the only scenario I see that involves Ottawa bringing in J.G. Pajot would involve somebody else paying part of the salary. Either the Islanders are retaining some of it, or they find a third party to take on some of that salary, or it's a buyout and a trade or something. I cannot see the Steve Staios for what he's looking for. Yes, J.G. Pajot fits that to a bill, exactly what he's looking for. But on that list of what he's looking for, I don't see $5 million a year on that list. You don't want to be paying somebody that kind of money to be played in your bottom six, just as the Islanders don't. So I can't see it happening without somebody eating some of that salary.
How about Connor Brown? He's in the Stanley Cup Final, and he looks like he's back to his normal Connor Brown self. What can Brown do
on a breakaway?
That was shocking.
Yeah,
that was truly shocking. Who? I mean, I think about it. Matthew Joseph and Connor Brown are the same guy. Like they just phenomenal speed, breakaway after breakaway, often on the shorthanded situation and just not being able to finish. But Connor Brown is an extremely useful player. And I saw a lot of people saying, okay, he's going to be available. Would you take another run potentially at Connor Brown?
Well, again, same thing. The player, yes. The qualities that he brings, most definitely. Now, he signed that contract in Washington after the trade, right? He was traded to Washington, then he signed. Has he still not got another year left, Steve? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's like $4 million a year, is it not? We need to look that up, I guess. But the type of player that he is, love it. I've always liked the way he plays the game. I just thought he was overused or over depended. I don't know what the word is, but the expectations and the dependency and what was required of him was outside of what he was capable of delivering consistently while he was an Ottawa Senator. He was really a third line guy and pretty much had to play the top six while he was here, but he still kills penalties. His knee's good. He's back from injury. He looks good. He's a perfect guy to play in your bottom six. And as far as I know, he loved it here in Ottawa. So yes, again, if the money's right, Connor Brown's a guy I would take.
Yeah, it's a situation where he's been, hovering around that $3.5–4 million mark for the last 4 years. The Sens signed him in 2020 to a 3-year contract with a cap hit of 3.6. They dealt him before the deal was done to the Washington Capitals. And he was injured for most of that final year of that contract and didn't really play much for the Capitals. And then he signed this season with the Oilers, and that too is a $4 million cap hit, but it's only a 1-year deal. So he is right there as a UFA for anyone to have.
Oh, then perfect. Then go get him.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about the Sens. They know, well, maybe not the new management, but the reality is he's known to the organization in a way, and that he was really good here. And I think a lot of now he's playing well in the Stanley Cup Final, and obviously everybody's seeing that. But when the smoke all clears and people are thinking about who they're going to sign as free agents, they're going to see the stat line on Connor Brown and the kind of money that he made this season, and they might go, I don't know about that. And but the Sens, I think they should know what he is, because he was a good soldier for this team for several years. And then Dylan DeMello was the other guy, former Senator, that it'll just come down to money, right? If the price is right, that's a perfect option. But to his credit, DeMello really built his career in Winnipeg. His time in San Jose and Ottawa, both good, serviceable, above average. But in Winnipeg, he took it to the next level, and now he's going to get paid. The question is, do the Sens want to pay that freight?
Yeah, and that's the $4 million question, or is it $5 million question? Like, there's your answer right there. Done. Your shopping completed. If you can get Dylan DeMello to come in here and play right D in your second pair or top pair, wherever he plays with Chabot or he plays with Sanderson, it's done. You move out Chikrin and everything's perfect. You don't even need to worry about the rest of that blue line, because you're bringing in Clevin as well. So I Dylan DeMello would be the one answer, and done. No more thinking, no more shopping, no more looking, no more talking. Done.
Yeah, the guy that you will allow his partner to go freewheeling. I think about Jake Sanderson and how much because the idea of Travis Hamonic in Jake Sanderson's first year, when they were paired together for most of his rookie season, Sanderson couldn't say enough good things about Hamonic on and off the ice. But the game, Father Time gets us all. And Hamonic just isn't there to be playing with the likes of Sanderson anymore. And I feel like DeMello will be filling that role that Pierre Dorion hoped Travis Hamonic would be able to through the 2 years of this current contract. He's just unfortunately not able to. So I think that's a slam dunk if the price is right and he wants to come back. I am so done with old school Christmas lights. The tangling, the burning out, the minus 30-degree installation, dangling from a ladder. Goodbye Christmas lights. Hello Celebrate, your permanent holiday lighting solution. I've got them on my home right now. When it's daylight, they're absolutely invisible. But at nighttime, things come to life. Right now, with the beautiful weather, we're looking forward to Canada Day. And of course, the classic colors of Christmas. You can really make the lights dance, all controlled from your smartphone. And on those nights when there is no occasion or holiday, you can roll with just a beautiful, subtle white light. And the installation team from Celebrate Ottawa was fantastic. So you can keep on rolling with old school Christmas lights, or you can contact them today at celebrate.ca. Yay!
This is Ryan. Ryan would love to start his own podcast as a fun way to create content for all his platforms, to better connect with his customers and build a new audience. But Ryan isn't great with technology, and he has a lot of questions. What's the easiest way to record a high-quality podcast? Does he need to travel to a studio? What equipment will he need? How does he get his podcast online? What if he has an out-of-town guest? Capital Podcast had all of Ryan's answers. After a free consultation, we took care of everything for him. All Ryan had to worry about was jumping on the mic and starring in his own show. He's recording this week's episode right from his office. His expert guest this week is one of his customers who's in a Chicago hotel room. And Capital Podcast is online with them, making sure the final product is perfect. Easy, convenient, professional. Contact us today and star in your own show with capitalpodcast.ca.
All right, so let's move on to the NHL Draft. Very exciting times for Sens fans. They do have 2 first-round draft picks, and the 7th overall pick is expected to be a very, very good player indeed. At 7th overall, do you have anybody that above all the others? Because we've seen the same half dozen suspects that the Sens might go after. Draft for need, or do I draft the best player? I think everybody is in the camp of the latter. But what player specifically, if the Sens, and being reasonable, I'd take Macklin Celebrini. I don't think he'll be there. But who would you take at 7th overall for Ottawa?
Well, it depends who is there, but I see it coming down to Parek, or I don't know how to say the guy's name, Zeev Buyum. How do you say that guy's name? Buyum.
Like when people say sometimes they say booyah.
Yeah, that guy. Okay, so he's going to be there. I think those are the 2 D left, and of course the other one is the other defenseman who will still be around is Jakubchuk, who I think is clearly the number 7 of the big 7D that are available. But I also look at a guy like Beckett Seneke playing for the Oshawa Generals, who's a right winger, who's got a lot of talent. I can see that guy sliding right in here someday and being a player. I guess the other one might be a Ginla, will still be around. I don't know how I feel about a Ginla, Steve. I don't know. Like, he looked okay at times when I saw him play, and other times he didn't look okay. But then you're thinking, okay, he isn't a Ginla. He is Jerome Ginla's son. Is that something we want to think about? Because this team does a good job of collecting sons of former NHLers. I just don't think it's a Ginla. I think it's down to Booyah or Parek or Seneke. I think those are my 3 guys I'm looking at. How about you?
Seneke's interesting in that I've watched his highlight reel, and he's got great hands for sure. But at the same time, I looked at the player and I was like, man, at the combine, without his gear on, and there's not a lot of distance between each shoulder. He's very sort of not slight, but he's a very slim Jim kind of guy. And so, the abuse that the players take up front or up against the board. So that would be a small concern just at a glance. But I think I'd be angling toward a forward. I think that a pick that high, I'm always worried about defensemen. Credit to the Sens 4 years ago for going after Jake Sanderson with a top 5 pick. But top 7 still pretty early, and I feel like forwards, you're more reliably going to hit with a forward than a defenseman. Defensemen take longer. Defensemen are tougher to predict as to how their game will translate from the OHL to the NHL. Like that Parek kid, he gives me fits thinking about the idea that he could just come and just keep dominating with the puck at the NHL level. But I don't see him as a very big guy. I don't see that as a need. So I look at, Buyum is great with the puck as well, so elusive. But in terms of need, I don't know if that's the right guy. Like Yakemchuk would be the sort of, if you wanted to draft a defenseman for need, I'd look at that. But in terms of actually picking at 7th overall, I'm going to try and stay away from a defenseman at this stage of the game and just go with the player I believe will have the best chance at being elite for you. And I think that is Jerome McGinley's kid, Tej, or Caden Lindstrom, who played in the Western Hockey League as well. And he's got size. He's got kind of that Kachuk way about him, like good skill, bull in a china shop. Another guy like that, he can play center or wing. I think one of those 2 guys, if they're there, I think they could both go earlier or later. That's the funny thing about this draft, right? Like once you get beyond the first 2 or 3 guys, it seems like everybody just, throw it all up in the air and see what happens. But it seems like everybody's got their own idea of where that 3 to 4 up to 10, 11, 12, it's all just a complete scramble. So anyway, that I would say that one of those 2 forwards, either Lindstrom, Ginla would be my first pick. And if he's there, I'm definitely taking him. And Lindstrom would be my second choice. And then I would probably go Buyum or Parek just because they're just so elite with the puck. It's just going to be hard to turn one of those guys down.
Yeah. Well, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Senators are picking 7 and 24, correct? It's 24 from Boston?
25,
Here's the question.
I think.
25?
24,
Okay.
25.
7 and 25, whatever it is. Will they pick in both those slots? Will they trade one of them? Will they trade both of them? If they do make a trade, will it be a flip down? Will it be a flip up? How are you picturing this playing out? What are you thinking about it?
I mean, everything's on the table. You know, whoever you think is an untouchable, if it's Brady Tkachuk or Tim Stützle, I will entertain the idea, but the price will have to be right, obviously. So there's nothing the Sens own that I wouldn't consider moving. For Tkachuk, it would have to be something just ridiculous. But I'd look at it, particularly if they again are that 7th overall pick might look fine to trade down a little bit, and if you've got somebody, as I just mentioned, is such a scramble of availability. So I mean, yeah, I'd certainly, to answer your question, I'd look at moving either of those first round picks, largely because I would be, if I were a GM, I would entertain anything you want to talk about.
Now, even though it's his first draft, right? Steve Stale's first draft as an NHL GM, first draft in Ottawa. I'm thinking there's still some pressure on him. He could easily slough it off and say, there's no pressure here. You know, we're going to get a good player at 7. We're going to get a good player at 24. Okay. I think there's a bit of pressure on him to, I don't want to say make a splash, but I do want to say make a splash. I think for the sake of the fan base, for the sake of improving this hockey club, for the sake of finding and adding to this team what's required, I think there's a bit of pressure on him to make sure this day goes really, really well. And I think because of that, I think there is something to it about, I could see him doing both. I could see them trading down at 7, and I could see them doing something with 24 or 25, whichever it is. I could see them doing something with that pick too. I could see there being a lot of action from Steve Stales. Now, of course, it takes a partner, and it depends on what happens before it picks 1 to 6. But I can see, I'm anticipating something happening here. Again, for the sake of the fact that he has to do something. He has to make something happen that I think impacts the roster quicker than drafting a player who's not going to be here for a couple of years.
Back to Ullmark, which was our top story.
Yeah, there you go.
If the Bruins are looking, they're looking at assets here, and they want one of those first round draft picks. I mean, there's certainly, they need goaltending right now. They don't need it in 3-4 years, which is when the 7th overall pick or the 25th overall pick will be able to really be an impact player for the Senators. So, yeah, I mean, in a scenario like that, I could easily see that going down or the Bruins demanding something like that. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a very interesting draft for the Ottawa Senators and their fan base, and whether this team really is remade this summer to a degree where they can compete for a playoff spot next season. I would wonder, as a rookie GM, if you maybe try and go according to Hoyle a little bit. Because if you step out and do things that are out of the ordinary, that's way more likely to get second guessed than if you do what everybody thinks you should do, the smart move that everybody thinks is the right one. I think about Alexander Daig, for example, right? Only people who are into revisionist history would go back and give the Sens any grief at all for taking Alexander Daig. 100% of the people said you should take Alexander Daig. And if you hadn't, the Ottawa fans would have burned the city down. It ended up being the wrong pick, of course. Chris Pronger would have been a better pick, or Paul Correa. But if it goes wrong when you're doing something according to Hoyle, you'll get less grief than something that goes wrong when you've gone way off the page. So I'll be keen to see if Staios does things in a conventional way or really tries to break out of the pack.
I have a name to throw at you.
All right, sir.
Ilya Nabokov. You heard of this guy?
Tell me about him.
Last year, junior was an all-star, turned pro this last year, was rookie of the year, led his team to the league championship in the playoffs, and was playoff MVP. And he's never been drafted, passed over once or twice. No, he's 20. So he's been passed over twice now, playing in the KHL as a goaltender, Steve. Is he a guy in the late 20s that may be a take or maybe a trade down because you want to take him? I see this guy being a pretty good goalie in the NHL from what I've been able to read on this guy. I did a deep dive, Steve. I snooped around on passed over guys, and he jumped out at me as being, this guy might be okay. This guy might work out.
I'm for anything. Goaltending is voodoo to me. Goaltending is voodoo to me. If it works, it works, and I'll be glad of it. And I'm glad that it's not my job to solve the Sens goaltending crisis. Everything's on the table for me. I mean, I brought up, Chris Drieger, for goodness sake. He's down.
Yeah, you did.
Coachella Valley. I'm game to try anything at this stage of the game if the price is right. Because if you're going to bring in a guy who's kind of a crapshoot goaltender, well, he might be great, but he might, be more of what we've been seeing for the last, 4 years since Craig Anderson left. That's fine. But if you've given up a bunch of draft capital and assets, that's not going to bode well. Like, they really have to get the goaltending right here, right now.
Yeah, and it's not a draft for goalies. Like, this guy's a 20-year-old, passed over twice, and he's in the top 3 on every list. Some lists he's 1, some lists he's 5, but I'd say on average he's about top 3 goaltender in the draft class this year. He's probably rated somewhere in the late second round, or maybe even into the third. But let's see, wait and see. I'm really interested to see where this guy gets taken, because from what I've been able to read and do some research on it, this guy looks interesting. I'd love to see the Sens maybe grab him with the third, but I'm thinking they don't have a third, do they? They gave up the third in the Cat deal. They've got a fourth, their own, and they got a fourth from Detroit in the Cat deal. So maybe they grab him in the 4th round, but I have a feeling he'll be gone by then. You just keep an eye on him. Ilya Nabokov, a goaltender, and I'm wondering if he's related. Duh, same name, same position. Maybe he's related. Who knows?
All right, move on to we're going to revisit the 2018 NHL Draft here. And that was a really interesting one for the Ottawa Senators because it brought them their current best player, in my opinion. And it was, of course, Brady Tkachuk being drafted 4th overall. And just looking back at that draft, Greg, like that it's always hard to give the Sens full credit because you don't know what they would have done if Montreal had done the smart thing at 3rd overall, right? If Montreal had taken Brady Tkachuk at 3 instead of Jesperi Kotkaniemi, then what would Ottawa have done at that point? Would they have gone after Philip Zadina? Quinn Hughes was a dandy too, but he wasn't selected until the 7th overall selection by Vancouver. So I would wonder if Zadina would have been the guy that Dorion went to, and if the Habs, on top of the Habs, I mean, they had Tkachuk, they had Quinn Hughes, they had Evan Bouchard, they had options. And yeah, I'm just talking about, I just glanced at the top 10, like who they could have had, and those guys were all in the top 10.
Right.
And they didn't go after any of them. They went after Kotkaniemi, who's since been offer sheeted after 3 years in Montreal. He ended up in Carolina. So they got nothing to show for it. But what would Ottawa have done in revisionist history? Do you think they would have gone after Zadina?
Well, I have a feeling yes. I mean, he was sort of the consensus guy at that slot. So, yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before. This draft and to a certain extent the Stützle draft, really the decision was made for Pierre Dorion. And I wonder if you raked him over hot coals and tied him up and threatened his life, if he'd tell you the absolute truth. And maybe the truth was, well, yeah, he was the best guy left. For God's sakes, we had to take him. But, we really wanted to take that guy. So I wonder about that one. Tkachuk, if he was gone, I would say yes, they would have taken Zadina, just as I think that they would have had a tough time if they'd had the 2nd pick instead of the 3rd pick of the Stützle draft.
Right. The top 10 was interesting that year because it was there was a lot of good players. The players I mentioned, and the top 2 are Dahlin and Svechnikov. Then you had Tkachuk, Hughes, and Bouchard, all in the top 10. So there's 5 guys that ended up being really good players. And then you had the other 5, let's say they have not yet realized or lived up to their high draft billing. Kotkaniemi, Barrett Hayton, who is, going
he's doing all right, defenseman in Utah.
Yeah, he's fine, but I don't think he's of the ilk of the other 5.
Noah Dobson in there?
Nope.
Okay.
He's later.
Okay.
Philip Zadina, Adam Boqvist, and Kravtsov. He's a Rangers Russian forward that has done nothing. So there's your top 10 that year, and It was such a different time, too, when you think about that draft, because the Sens had just gone to a conference final, and now you're drafting Brady Tkachuk. Like, really exciting. Like, this team is on its way. And that fall, they also got, Matthew Duchesne, and it really seemed to be coming together. Yeah, Dorion was there, Boucher, Melnick, Trent Mann. It sure went south in a hurry, didn't it?
Yes, it did. We got a musical drop to play in there. Little coyote running off the edge of the cliff.
Yeah. Just imagine it, because I'm not doing it. It's not happening.
Okay. All right.
So there it is, revisiting the 2018 NHL Draft. And let's close it out with this Stanley Cup Final happening on Monday night. If you're listening after Monday, apologies for being dated on it, but we're recording this on a rainy Sunday afternoon, and the Stanley Cup Final will conclude on Monday night. What's better than Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, Greg?
Oh, man. Looking forward to it. We all know how much I hate the Edmonton Oilers and how disgusted I am that they've been able to come back. They better lose Monday night. That's all I have to say. The Panthers got to win. Come on. Get your acting gear. Get your collective heads out of your butts and get back to playing your game and end this once and for all.
What I'm surprised about, if you look historically at teams that have blown 3-0 leads in series, this is the 10th time it's happened, where a team that's down 0-3 has forced a Game 7. And I would have thought that the team that blew the 3-0 lead would be in full panic mode, and they'd have a terrible record. They actually have a winning record. They're 5-4, the teams that have blown 3-0 leads in Game 7s. So it's still 50-50, but I think I would have thought that team that blew the lead would be, I don't know, of the 9 games, like 2-7, because you'd be in panic mode, I would have thought, but history doesn't seem to support that.
No, I think history supports that the better team that got out to the 3-0 lead should probably win. Then you're right. At 5-4, it's 4 times what Philly not too long ago against Boston, the 75 Islanders, the 42 Leafs, and there's one I'm forgetting. It's really only happened 4 times, but it's interesting that, as you just pointed out, that team's only ever come back 9 times, right?
Yeah.
It's only been, this is the 10th time. That's it. Only 10 times as somebody forced a Game 7 went down 3-0. That's almost weirder than the fact that 4 teams have done it and won. But I don't know that anybody is favored in any way. Who should be the favorite? The team that's, okay, we can't possibly lose 4 in a row, so okay, they're going to win. Or this team's come all the way back. That team's completely shell-shocked, so the team coming back should win. I don't know how you would determine the favorite. Home ice doesn't seem to matter all that much. I think the biggest indicator seems to be who scores the first goal, probably in most of these things. Game 7, team that scores the first goal is probably like 80% wins. I don't know what it is. I'm throwing that number out there, but I bet that's probably the only indicator that's going to matter here.
Does Connor McDavid get the Conn Smythe regardless of what happens on Monday night?
I think so. When the series started, I would have said it's Barkov. After the first 2 games, I would have said, okay, it's Bob in net, and then Bob kind of lost his net, and then Barkov hasn't exactly shut down McDavid. The numbers, the stats, the performance, what this guy's done throughout the playoffs, breaking or equaling records all the way along. I think it's going to be. Although I enjoyed your little piece in the Hockey News. Sorry, little. I didn't mean to belittle your little piece, but I enjoyed thinking about it. Your thought that if to win the Conn Smythe, shouldn't you be on the winning team? And here's one thing that can support your argument. There are a lot of people out there who believe that you cannot win the MVP award. You cannot win the Hart Trophy if your team doesn't make the playoffs. Oh, I'm not voting for anybody on that. You don't make the playoffs. How can you give that guy the Hart Trophy? So, okay, if you don't win the Stanley Cup, how do you give the guy the Conn Smythe? So I can add that to your argument, Steve.
Yeah, no, that's true. And, the Hart Trophy thing, I think that's silly because, if let's say McDavid and the Oilers missed the playoffs, but McDavid scored 300 points, you're just going to say you can't be the Hart Trophy winner. I don't see that happening. Yeah.
There'd be guys who wouldn't vote for him.
No doubt. And I think people got furious with me. I'm mostly Oiler fans when I suggested that the Conn Smythe should only go to the it should never go to the player on the losing team. And it was lining up at that point to be McDavid. McDavid, under the criteria that exists, is my Conn Smythe Trophy winner. But I would like to see them change the rules so that it only goes to the winner. And the reason for that is, and it's with all due respect, McDavid has been phenomenal. I think I also caused some eyebrows to raise when I called him the best player I've ever seen, which is true, even though I lived through Wayne Gretzky's entire career. I believe that. So I'm very much on the McDavid flag-waving team. But the reason I don't like the loser getting the Conn Smythe is this week we were talking about the 4 guys that have won the Conn Smythe and lost: Roger Crozier, Reggie Leach, J.S. Giguère, and Ron Hextall. And seeing Hextall and Giguère, because they were the more modern guys, seeing their faces when they're accepting this trophy, this amazing trophy, in the midst of all the celebration, they're damn near weeping. They're furious. Hextall's always furious, though. Giguère looked like someone had, done something to his family. Like, just, to me, it's part of the celebration. There's going to be somebody on the winning team that is a worthy candidate. There's never a scenario where, the entire team, all the skaters had 3 points apiece. The goaltending was just okay. Like, there's always a worthy candidate on the winning team. And so to avoid Debbie Downer over here accepting the Conn Smythe Award, I'd like to see it always go to the winner.
Okay, but you just finished saying if Connor McDavid gets 300 points and his team misses the playoffs, he should win the MVP. So if Connor McDavid gets 60 points in the playoffs and he doesn't win the Stanley Cup, he should probably still get the MVP.
No.
I agree with you. The point about sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it's apples to oranges, though. Like that, that example of the Hart Trophy, there's no presentation. There's no big celebration that's happening right now.
They made Giguère do it on the ice.
Right. Hextall, I think, was back in the dressing room or something like that.
Back in the day, it used to be done backstage after the series was over. Dave Hodge and John Siegler or whoever were there to hand out the thing, right? It was done off camera. But they made Giguère stay on the ice. I read an article this week, and he's standing there in the who was it? Detroit? I don't even remember who they lost to. They're all staring at him. New Jersey. Yeah, New Jersey. And like, what is this guy doing here? Why is he still on the ice? Like, what? Get off the ice, buddy. But they asked him to stick around so that Gary could hand him the trophy on the ice. So if McDavid wins and the Oilers lose, it'll be interesting to see if maybe they don't do it on the ice this year. That might be, right. And to a man, all 4 of those guys, Leach and not Crozier, he wasn't interviewed for the article, but Leach and Hextall and Giguère all said, like, it meant nothing to me. I wanted nothing to do with it. I was, pissed off, disappointed, sad, whatever. It meant something later, looking back on it, but winning it under those conditions in that situation, it meant absolutely nothing to me at the time.
Yeah, and that's why, I think the Conn Smythe should be part of winning a championship. You're partying with your buddies. We're the champions, and that's our guy. He won the Conn Smythe. It's part of it to me, and that's why I'd like to see it just go to the winners. And that will do it for this week's show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Don't forget our website is sensnationhockey.com. Email us anytime if you have any comments on the show or something you'd like to hear us talk about here on the Sens Nation podcast. It is sensnationhockey@outlook.com. Don't forget to check out the hockey news as well, thn.com/Ottawa. All kinds of neat Senator articles there that I encourage you to check out. And I encourage you, Greg, to have a fantastic week, and we will talk to you next time.
I will. Enjoy Game 7, everybody.